Poor girl pays subway fare for a stranger not knowing he is millionaire. What he did surprised everyone. This is a story about quiet courage, unexpected connection, and how one small act can rewrite two broken lives. Before we begin, let us know where you're watching from. We love seeing how far these stories travel. Now, enjoy the story. Rain had a way of softening the edges of a city until it didn't. In New Orleans, it came hard and fast, smearing neon lights into bleeding streaks across the slick pavement. Thunder cracked overhead as people ducked under awnings and into bars, coffee shops, and subway tunnels. But Damian Cole didn't move. He stood on the sidewalk just outside the Jackson Square subway entrance, blinking water out of his eyes, his hoodie clinging to his frame. A dark smear of mud stained one sleeve from when he'd helped an older man gather spilled groceries 2 blocks back. In that brief moment of distraction, someone had slipped his backpack right off the bench behind him. Gone. His phone, his wallet, his company ID, his name. And the worst part? No one even noticed. The city moved on. He stood there for a few more seconds as if willing the moment to reverse, as if the rain would wash back time. But it didn't. All it did was soak his shoes and blur the edges of the street signs. Damian took a breath, wiped the water from his face, and descended the subway stairs 2 at a time. The heat of the underground hit him immediately, stale air and damp concrete, the musk of metal rails and sweat. The din of footsteps echoed off the tiled walls, mixing with the low buzz of electric lights overhead. He needed to get back to the apartment he'd been renting under an alias. Maybe call someone from a landline if those still existed. Maybe just walk the whole way and let the storm soak him to the bone. But something deeper inside him, a need to feel human again, pushed him to try. At the turnstile, he stood dripping and stared at the payment kiosk. Card declined. The machine blinked in red. Damian tried again. Card declined. Of course. It was a temporary card linked to a phone number now locked behind a fingerprint scanner on a phone that was probably already being factory reset. He patted his pockets one more time, hoping for a miracle. Nothing. A line started forming behind him. Someone sighed dramatically. A man muttered something about tourists. The attendant barely glanced up from his seat behind the plexiglass booth. Damian turned. "Do you take cash?" The man stared at him. "Does it look like we take cash?" "It's 2025, man." A woman behind Damian barked, "Can you move? Some of us have trains to catch." He stepped aside, jaw clenched, and felt the flush rise to his cheeks, not just from embarrassment, but from a shame he hadn't felt since he was a teenager. The kind of shame you swallow when you're poor, when you're voiceless, when people look past you like you're less than human. Of all the problems Damian had solved in his life, funding rounds, IPO launches, corporate lawsuits, this was the one that made him feel most useless. A billionaire who couldn't afford a $2.75 ride home. He ran a hand through his wet hair, letting out a breath that fogged the air. And then, like a ripple in still water, he heard a soft voice. "Need a hand." He turned. She couldn't have been more than 25. Slender, with soaked sneakers, a dark hoodie drawn over a ballet bun, and a canvas bag slung across one shoulder. Her eyes were the kind you didn't forget, wide, tired kind, and quietly fierce. She didn't ask for an explanation. She didn't wait for permission. She just stepped forward, tapped her transit card twice, and gestured toward the gate. "Go," she said gently, "before the machine changes its mind." Damian blinked. "You didn't have to do that." "I know," she replied, "but you looked like you needed it." He stepped through slowly, almost reluctant. She followed behind him, her wet sneakers squeaking slightly on the tile floor. "I'll pay you back," he said, turning to face her. I got robbed. I don't normally." She tilted her head. "It's okay. I didn't do it for the payback." "What's your name, Lena?" she said, pressing a button on her watch. It beeped faintly. "Next train's in 2 minutes." "Damian?" he offered, then quickly added D. "People call me D." She nodded, already moving toward the platform. "Well, D, don't lose your backpack next time." He let out a breathy laugh and watched her settle onto one of the empty benches. She pulled a folded umbrella from her bag, not to dry herself, but to shake out the water and put it away. She didn't even bother trying to look dry. She wasn't trying to impress anyone. He sat across from her. The station lights flickered above like tired stars. "So," she said casually, "what were you doing out in the storm without backup?" He shrugged, trying to remember what it feels like to be normal. She looked up at him. "What does that even mean?" Damien opened his mouth, then closed it. No one had ever asked him that. Not sincerely. The train roared into the station brakes, hissing. A gust of wind swept through the tunnel, ruffling Lena's hair and pressing damp strands against her cheek. She stood and moved toward the doors, then paused and glanced back. "Hope you find what you're looking for," she said. He opened his mouth again to thank her properly, to ask something, anything, but the doors hissed shut behind her. Lena Moreau disappeared into the crowd. Damien sat alone on the train car, watching her vanish behind the streaked window. The train pulled forward into darkness, and he felt something unfamiliar. Not awe, not guilt, not even attraction, not yet. It was longing. A longing for something that wasn't bought, scheduled, managed, or polished. A longing to be seen without being judged. The subway lights flashed against the tunnel walls. His reflection blinked back at him from the dark glass. He whispered her name once, just to feel how it sounded. Lena. Meanwhile, across the city, Lena climbed the last few steps to the second-floor apartment she shared with her 9-year-old brother and their elderly neighbor. Her keys jingled in her pocket. Her clothes were still wet. Her shoulders ached. She didn't know who the man was, but something in his eyes, lost, quiet, proud, had looked familiar. Just for a moment, she'd seen a version of herself in him. And that was enough. She dropped her bag by the door, peeled off her hoodie, and looked at the nearly empty fridge. Cereal, 1 egg, half a lemon. Still, she smiled. Tomorrow she had dance class with the kids at the center. And that was something to look forward to. As she changed into dry clothes and sat cross-legged on the mattress, she called a bed. Her brother sleeping soundly in the other room, Lena allowed herself one more thought before drifting to sleep. Maybe helping someone else tonight made all of this feel a little less heavy. Maybe kindness, even in a broken world, still mattered. Damien didn't sleep that night. He tried. He lay on the borrowed bed in the barely furnished rental, a converted unit above a shuttered jazz bar, and stared at the water stain on the ceiling until dawn turned it gold. But the silence pressed in like fog, thick and suffocating, carrying her voice. "You looked like you needed it." 5 seconds of kindness. That was all it took to fracture the detachment he'd spent years perfecting. He'd met CEOs who pitched million-dollar mergers without blinking. He'd survived war rooms, boardrooms, and media exposés. He could quote entire paragraphs of investor contracts from memory. But he couldn't forget her. Lena, no last name, no Instagram, no email. Just a voice that had cut through the blur like a single note played on a quiet piano. And for the first time in months, Damien felt something beyond burnout, beyond numbness. He felt curiosity, the kind that demanded motion. So he moved. By 8 a.m., Damien stood in front of the subway station again, dressed in clean jeans and a plain gray t-shirt, trying to retrace her steps from the night before. The platform was quieter now, morning rush hour easing into routine. He stopped by the same turnstile, glanced around, and then did something he rarely did anymore. He asked for help. "Excuse me," he said to the station attendant, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and chipped pink nails. "Last night a woman helped me pay my fare. She had a Pass Metro card. Do you by any chance have surveillance access?" The woman raised an eyebrow. "Why, you gonna sue her for kindness?" Damien laughed softly. "No, ma'am. I just want to thank her." The woman studied him for a long beat. There was something in his tone, earnest, grounded, not rehearsed. "She your girl?" "No," he said quietly, "but she might have saved something I didn't know I was losing." That softened her. "Sorry, honey. We don't keep footage unless there's an incident. You could try transit headquarters, but they won't give it to you unless you're law enforcement." Damien nodded, not surprised. "Thanks, anyway." He stepped back into the stream of pedestrian traffic and stood still as the rest of the world moved around him. People rushed past him the way they had the night before, blurred and busy eyes on screens, bags on wheels, headphones in. It hit him all over again. He never even got her last name. But he had something. One clue, Next stop Moreau Street, the announcer had said when she left the train. It had caught his ear. Moreau. Not just a street. Possibly a name. He opened his phone, pulling up a city database. He wasn't exactly authorized to have access to one of the many perks of being Damian Cole, the man with contacts in every digital corridor. Moreau Community Arts Center, a half-mile from the subway exit. Founded in 1996. Nonprofit. Underfunded. Nearly condemned last year due to structural violations. Currently open on weekday evenings for youth programming. And listed among its volunteers, L. Moreau. He stared at the listing for a long time, then smiled. The building looked like it had stories to tell, most of them whispered from cracked bricks and rusted gutters. It sat on the corner of a quiet block lined with magnolia trees and sun-faded murals, one of which depicted a little girl dancing under a crescent moon. The paint was chipped, but the spirit remained. Damian approached slowly, almost sheepish. For all his confidence in boardrooms, this felt different. This wasn't strategy. This was something raw. The front door creaked as he pushed it open. Inside, a small lobby led into a makeshift dance room. Mats taped to the floor, scuffed mirrors, fluorescent lights that buzzed unevenly. Children's laughter echoed from down the hallway, followed by the thump of sneakers and the chiming of a Bluetooth speaker. "Try again from the top," a voice called. He knew that voice. Damian followed it quietly, stopping just outside the doorway to a wide room filled with motion. 10 or 12 kids, mostly girls, ages 7 to 10, were gathered in rows, following the movements of the woman in the front. Lena, hair pinned up, hoodie tied around her waist, bare feet on worn wood. She moved with the grace of someone born to move, even with a subtle limp in her left leg that told a story of its own. Her presence filled the room, not loudly but fully. The kids mimicked her steps, laughed when they tripped, clapped when one of them nailed a spin. And Damian just stood there transfixed. This was her world, and somehow, without meaning to, he'd stepped into it. After class, Lena handed out little cups of water and high-fived each child as they left. Damian stayed in the hallway, hands in his pockets, debating whether to walk away and leave the moment untouched. But when the last student disappeared out the door, Lena turned and saw him. For a beat, her brow furrowed. Then recognition dawned. "You again," she said, blinking. "Lost another card." He smiled. "No, just found something worth looking for." Lena narrowed her eyes, unsure whether to be wary or amused. "How'd you find me?" "I remembered the subway announcement, Moreau Street. Took a chance. That's a long walk for someone with no fare." "Worth it." She tilted her head. "You're not from around here, are you?" "No," he admitted. "I needed a break. From everything." She crossed her arms, leaning against the doorframe. "So what are you doing now?" "Following every stranger who helps you out. Only the ones who save me twice." "Twice you paid my fare," he said. "But you also reminded me that there are still people out there who don't ask for anything in return. That kind of grace is rare." Lena's face softened slightly, but her guard didn't drop. "You're not here to film some social experiment, are you?" Damian chuckled. "No cameras, no agenda. Just curiosity. And maybe gratitude." She studied him for a moment longer, then nodded toward the lobby. "You want coffee? It's terrible, but it's hot." He followed her, a quiet thrill building in his chest. He didn't need perfect coffee. He needed her company, and he was just beginning to realize why. They walked side by side toward the tiny kitchenette off the lobby, a narrow room that smelled like instant noodles, wood polish, and old coffee grounds. The kind of place built from donations and duct tape. The kind of place Damian thought that felt more real than any office he'd ever worked in. Lena opened a cabinet, pulled down 2 mismatched mugs, and started the drip machine with a practiced flick. "It takes exactly 7 minutes," she warned, "and tastes like regret by minute 8. Damian smiled, settling onto a folding chair. "I've survived worse." Lena leaned against the counter, arms crossed. For a moment, neither spoke. Outside the window, the sky was clearing, sunlight slanting across the sidewalk, catching on broken glass like diamonds. Inside, the quiet stretched, but not uncomfortably. So she said, breaking it, "What's your story, subway man?" He hesitated. "Honestly, I'm still figuring it out. That bad. That unfinished." She raised an eyebrow but didn't press. She knew the type. People who came to this city to forget something until they found something they didn't want to forget. I used to work in tech, Damien offered after a beat. Built a company. It got big. Fast. You sold it. No. I stepped away. That's unusual. So was the burnout. Lena nodded slowly. She understood burnout, the kind that wasn't just about long hours, but about soul erosion. The kind that made you forget who you were when no one was watching. The coffee maker gurgled. She poured them each a cup and slid one toward him. No cream, no sugar. The budget doesn't allow for luxury. He took a sip and winced. Luxury might be overrated. Try telling that to a roomful of 9-year-olds who want chocolate milk. He laughed, and she smiled for real this time, not guarded, not polite. Warm. It changed the shape of her face, made her look younger and stronger all at once. Those kids out there, he said, gesturing toward the hallway. They adore you. They don't adore me, she said modestly. They adore dancing. I'm just the one who remembered the Bluetooth password. That's not true. You were teaching more than choreography. She looked down into her cup, swirling it gently. Sometimes I think I'm just trying to teach them how to keep going when the world doesn't clap. Damien swallowed. That hit too close to home. You know, he said, for someone I just met, you've had an unfair number of good lines. She grinned. Stick around. I get better with worse coffee. For the first time in weeks, maybe months, Damien didn't feel like he was passing through. He felt like he'd arrived. The coffee really was terrible. Burnt. Bitter. Served from a pot older than most of the children who danced in the next room. But Damien drank every drop without complaint, sitting on a folding chair in the lobby of the Moreau Community Arts Center opposite Lena, who nursed her cup like it was a necessary evil. This is part of the training, right? He said, swallowing hard. What training? To volunteer here. You have to prove your loyalty by surviving this coffee. Lena cracked a grin. You wouldn't last a week. I'd last 2. I'm very stubborn. She leaned back against the wall, one knee pulled up to her chest, watching him over the rim of her cup. She was quieter today, less guarded, but still observant, like someone used to having her space invaded and learning how to measure new presences carefully. So she said, "What do you actually do?" D. He hesitated. This was the moment, the invitation to lie or sidestep or dress the truth in simpler words. I used to run a company, he said. Tech stuff, mostly software. I stepped away recently. Burnout, something like that. She nodded slowly. You don't strike me as the corporate type. He shrugged. I wasn't. But the job doesn't care who you are if you're good at making money. And were you? Damien took a beat too long to answer. Yeah, she noticed. He could tell by the way she looked at him, not judgmental, just curious. So, why'd you stop? Because I woke up one day, he said, in a glass condo with a personal chef and a closet full of clothes that still had tags on them, and I realized I hadn't laughed in 6 months. Lena blinked. That's a specific kind of sad. I know. She said nothing, and neither did he. The air between them filled with a silence that was somehow both comfortable and loaded. Then she stood up, stretched her arms over her head, and nodded toward the dance room. You want to earn your coffee? Is there a challenge involved? There's a stereo that hasn't worked properly in months, a broken light above the mirror, and a closet full of costumes that no one's dared to untangle since Mardi Gras. Pick your battle. Damien smiled. Costume closet. Sounds like a trap, but I'm in. And just like that, he became part of her world. The next few days followed a new rhythm. Damien showed up each evening at the center, not with grand gestures or expensive gifts, but with a toolkit, a roll of duct tape, and a quiet willingness to help. He fixed the stereo on the second day, replaced the light bulb on the third, untangled a string of fairy lights, and rewired a broken floor fan by the end of the week. He never overstepped, never tried to lead. He just listened, observed, helped where he could. And Lena watched him. She watched the way he talked to the kids, never condescending, always attentive. She noticed how he moved through the space, respectful, present, patient. He asked questions, remembered names, laughed, but never too loudly. She couldn't figure him out. He was too polished to be a drifter, too self-contained to be aimless, too natural with people to be just passing through. But most of all, he didn't ask for anything. Not her story, not her number, not her time. And that was what made her start to trust him. One Thursday night, after the last child had left and the floor had been swept, Lena sat on the edge of the stage, her feet dangling over the side while Damien finished fixing the jammed drawer in the office desk. "You ever dance?" she asked casually. Damien looked up from his work. Not on purpose. She laughed. "That bad worse. You'd surprise me." He looked at her, brushing dust from his hands. "Why do you say that you're always watching? Like someone who used to dance, or wanted to." He sat beside her, leaving a respectful distance between them. "When I was a kid, I watched performances on TV through store windows. Couldn't afford cable, but I'd stand outside electronics shops on my walk home from school and pretend I was in the audience." She smiled. "Did you ever try once? A girl in foster care taught me a few steps. I was decent at counting beats, but I was too self-conscious to keep going." "You don't seem self-conscious now." He shrugged. "Money helps with that. But it doesn't fix what's underneath." That caught her off guard. "You're not what I expected," she said quietly. "What did you expect I don't know? Some guy who shows up once, promises to donate paint, then disappears." He looked at her, voice lower now. "I'm not disappearing." She didn't say anything for a moment. Her gaze lingered on him a second too long. Then she stood, brushing off her jeans. "Come on, I'll show you how to count in eights." He raised an eyebrow. "Are you trying to make me dance, call it community service?" He groaned theatrically, but followed her to the mirror. And for the next half hour, under the hum of overhead lights and the quiet rhythm of her instructions, he let her lead. She showed him how to step and turn and laugh at himself when he got it wrong. At one point, he tripped over his own foot, caught himself on the mirror, and looked at her in mock offense. "Don't say it." "I wasn't going to," she said with a smirk. But it was adorable. He looked at her then, not just as the girl who'd paid his subway fare or the woman who moved like poetry, but as someone he wanted to keep standing next to. Not just for the dance, but for what came after, later that night. As Damien walked home through the misty streets, passing jazz clubs and flickering neon signs, he felt something inside him shift. It wasn't love yet, but it was a beginning. And beginnings, he was learning, didn't always need a plan. Back in his small rental, he opened a blank notebook, sat down by the window, and wrote just one sentence across the top of the page. "What if real things don't come with guarantees?" Friday morning arrived with a sharp wind that cut through the alleyways of the Marigny district and rattled loose shutters against brick. Inside the Moreau Community Arts Center, the heater groaned to life for the first time in weeks, sputtering warmth through vents lined with dust. Lena was already sweeping the main floor when Mrs. Conway, the center director, stepped inside carrying a crumpled envelope in one hand and a tightness in her face that Lena hadn't seen since the last time the building failed an inspection. "We got a notice," she said, simply holding up the envelope like it weighed more than paper should. Lena leaned the broom against the wall. "What kind of notice?" "Final one. From the city." Mrs. Conway exhaled as she sank into the plastic chair by the window. "We're $6,000 behind on fire code repairs. They gave us 30 days. This time it's real. If we can't cover it, they'll shut us down." The silence that followed felt like a drop in pressure, an invisible implosion that left only the sound of the heater hissing behind them. Lena moved to the window and looked out, not because she didn't want to face it, but because she already knew what she'd see: a cracked sidewalk, a broken bike rack, murals peeling in the sun, a place that had always tried its best. "How much do we have?" Mrs. Conway opened the top drawer of the reception desk and pulled out a manila folder. "After utilities, insurance, and staff stipends, maybe $1, $200 in savings. So, a miracle short." Mrs. Conway gave a half-hearted smile. "Unless you've got a magic wand hidden in that dance closet." Lena didn't answer. Her thoughts drifted not to grants or bake sales or miracles, but to the man who had been showing up every night for the past week. The man with quiet hands, a strange past, and eyes that watched everything like it mattered. That evening, Damien arrived at his usual time just after sunset. He brought a box of donuts for the kids and a small Bluetooth speaker tucked under his arm. He'd noticed the current one had started skipping. He found Lena sitting alone in the back of the dance room, her knees pulled up to her chest, fingers picking absently at a fraying seam in her jeans. There was something distant in her expression, still but not calm. "Hey," he said gently, setting the box down. "Bad day." She didn't look up. "How do you save something when no one else wants to?" Damien crouched beside her. "That's a heavy question for a Friday." "I'm serious. So am I." She finally looked at him. "They're shutting us down. The city gave us 30 days to come up with $6,000 for fire code repairs. We have 1,200, maybe." Damien's jaw tensed, but he kept his voice even. "That's not impossible. In this neighborhood it is." He didn't say anything for a moment. "Then let me help." Her reaction was instant, like he'd slapped her. "No. Lena, no." She stood suddenly defensive. "I know what this is. The rich guy swoops in with his checkbook and saves the poor little community center. It looks good on his record. Makes a great press release." "That's not why." "Isn't it?" Her voice rose. "Why are you even here, Damien? Why are you volunteering in a building with broken toilets and no heat? What are you trying to fix?" He stared at her, stunned. Not angry, hurt. And that hurt traveled through his chest like a slow burn. "I'm not trying to fix anything," he said quietly. "I just wanted to stay in the only place that felt real." That stopped her. The room fell silent. The heater kicked on again, buzzing overhead like it too was unsure what to say. Lena sat back down softer this time. Her voice, when it came again, was barely audible. "I've had a lot of people offer help. Most of them had strings. The others disappeared the moment things got hard. I'm not them. I want to believe that." Damien lowered his gaze to the floor. "Then let me try." She didn't respond. But she didn't say no either. The next day, Lena arrived to find a folded sheet of paper tucked under the coffee machine. Handwritten, no letterhead, no credit card slip, just a message. No names, no titles, no conditions, just repairs. And a check for exactly $6,000. She stared at it for a long time, her hands trembling. And then she cried. Not because someone had saved the center, but because for once they had done it quietly. The next week, word spread quickly. Repairs began. Inspectors came. The fire alarms were updated, exit signs rewired, new smoke detectors installed. Volunteers showed up from other nonprofits. A roofer donated half a day. A local shop owner offered fresh paint. Lena watched it all like someone in a dream. The center, the heart of her neighborhood, was breathing again. And Damien was still there. Every day. But something had shifted. He no longer fixed broken things just to be useful. He did it like someone who had found a reason to stay. One afternoon, while helping repaint the back office, Damien asked her what made her stay here. In New Orleans. In this building. With these kids. You could dance anywhere. Lena sat on the windowsill, arms flecked with white paint. "I don't dance for stages anymore." "Why not?" She hesitated. "Because I can't." Damien waited. "I tore a ligament my last year at conservatory," she said. "Scholarship gone. Career gone. I couldn't afford the surgery. Had to come home, help raise my brother. That was 5 years ago." He was quiet. "I used to think dance was the only thing I had," she added. "But then I started teaching. And I realized maybe it wasn't about me being seen. Maybe it was about helping them be seen." He looked at her like she'd said the most extraordinary thing in the world, because to him she had. That night, they walked home together for the first time. It wasn't planned. The rain had returned light this time, more like a mist, and she didn't have an umbrella. Damien offered his jacket. She refused. He draped it over her shoulders anyway. They said nothing for most of the walk, but in the spaces between silence, something bloomed, a kind of closeness that didn't need words. When they reached her building, she turned to him and paused. "You've done more than enough," she said. "I don't want to take advantage." He stepped back, hands in his pockets. "You're not. I'm exactly where I want to be." She searched his eyes like she was looking for the catch, but there wasn't one. "Good night, Dee," she whispered. "Good night, Lena." He watched her climb the stairs, his heart beating faster than it had in months. Not from infatuation, but from the feeling that for the first time in a long time, he'd landed somewhere that made him want to stay. It began the way truths always seem to arrive quietly, without warning, like a crack in the ceiling no one noticed until rain started dripping through. Lena didn't go looking for it. She didn't even want to know more than what Damien had already told her, that he used to run a company, that he'd walked away, that he preferred fixing loose floorboards and dancing offbeat to living in glass towers. But the world didn't always wait for permission. It was a Saturday afternoon, and she was at Cafe Indigo, grabbing extra napkins and bottled water for the center's community open house. The event was Lena's idea, a way to thank the neighborhood for rallying behind the center's revival. Mrs. Conway had even secured a reporter from the local station. Nothing major, just a short story about the power of community. Lena was halfway to the door when she caught a headline on the TV behind the bar. "Former tech mogul Damien Cole makes rare appearance at charity gala in New York." She froze. The sound wasn't on, but the video was clear archival footage of Damien in a sharp tuxedo stepping out of a black car, smiling faintly as photographers called his name. He looked different, sleek, guarded, untouchable. The caption underneath, "Founder and CEO of Cygnus Systems, estimated net worth $1.7 billion. Lena's breath hitched. Damien Cole. Her Damien. Her pulse quickened. She pulled out her phone with trembling fingers, typed the name into the search bar, and felt her throat close as articles, videos, and photos filled the screen. It was him. The same deep-set eyes. The same voice. But not the same man. Not the one who'd painted walls beside her, who tripped over dance steps and laughed when his hands got splattered in glue during arts and crafts. Not the man who handed her his jacket in the rain like it was second nature. Or maybe it was, and that's what scared her most. That evening, the open house buzzed with warmth. Families from the neighborhood arrived with potluck trays and music playlists. Kids ran through the halls, teachers gave tours, and the stereo Damien had repaired months ago hummed with life. He arrived late, as always, quiet, without fanfare, carrying 3 boxes of pastries and a donation jar under one arm. His smile was easy, the kind he'd practiced in public, but had slowly let fade with her. Until now, Lena spotted him the moment he walked in. And suddenly everything felt heavier. The colors dulled, the music muted. His presence, once grounding, now made the floor feel uncertain beneath her feet. She waited until the crowd thinned, until the music died down, until the lights flickered overhead and the room emptied of laughter. And then she found him by the supply closet, arranging the chairs like he always did, like it was just another night of helping. "Damien," she said quietly. He turned, that same familiar smile softening his features. "Hey, you okay?" Her voice caught in her throat. She held up her phone. The screen glowed with an article titled, "The Disappearance of Damien Cole from CEO to Recluse." His smile faltered. The silence stretched. "Say something," she whispered. He exhaled slowly. "I wanted to. When the first week." She laughed once, a single bitter note. "But you didn't. I was going to. I didn't know how. You lied." "I didn't lie. You let me believe you were someone else." Her voice trembled now. "You let me think you were just some guy with burned-out ambition and a broken past. You let me fall for that." Damien stepped closer. "Everything I said was true, except who you were. I was trying to be who I am now." Lena looked away, her eyes burning. "And what would have happened if I'd never seen that TV? Would you have just kept pretending?" "Let me build trust on a foundation of what edited truth." "No," he said firmly. "But I knew if I told you up front, you'd look at me the way everyone else does. And I didn't want that. I wanted you to see me before you saw the name. I did see you, Damien, and you ruined it." He reached out instinctively, but she stepped back. "I don't know what any of this is now," she continued, her voice rising slightly. "The donation, the dancing, the stories about being burned out. Was that all some kind of act? No, God, no. Then, what was real? Damien's voice cracked. You. This, all of it. Then why didn't you just tell me the truth? Because I was scared, he admitted. Because I've lived in a world where everything is a transaction. Every friendship, every handshake, every headline, it all comes with a price tag. And for once, I just wanted to be in a place where someone wasn't calculating what I was worth before they even asked my name. Her eyes shimmered, but her face didn't soften. Then, maybe you should have trusted me enough to give me the choice. He swallowed the lump in his throat. I'm sorry. I need space, she said, voice flat and final. He nodded, lips pressed into a line. Okay? And just like that, the air shifted. The warmth between them, the thing that had been building in shared glances and half-spoken truths, froze over. Later. That night. The center was dark when Damien finally left. The echoes of the open house still clung to the walls, but it felt like someone had pulled the plug on the entire atmosphere. He walked the long way home past shuttered bars and flickering streetlights, trying to understand how something that felt so right could fall apart so fast. But he knew. He'd spent his whole life hiding behind success. And when he'd finally found someone worth being honest for, he'd waited too long. He couldn't blame her. But he'd never hated himself more. He sat in his apartment until 3 a.m., staring at the untouched piano by the window. The city breathed around him, full of windows he didn't belong to anymore. He wondered if she'd ever talk to him again, if he'd even earned that right. He reached for his phone more than once, typed her name, deleted it. In the end, he wrote her a message and didn't send it. I never meant to make you feel small. You're the first person who ever made me feel human again. Across the city, Lena sat on the rooftop of her apartment building, knees drawn to her chest, hoodie pulled tight. The city below buzzed faintly cars, whined laughter from a nearby bar, but all she could hear was her own heartbeat, thick and angry and sad. She wasn't angry that he was rich. She wasn't even angry that he hadn't told her right away. She was angry that he had made her feel safe, made her believe he was different, and then proved he wasn't. Because in her world, people with power didn't walk into community centers to fix stereos and sweep floors. They came to take pictures, write checks, and disappear. But Damien hadn't disappeared. He'd stayed. He'd helped. He'd danced badly and laughed at himself and talked to kids like they mattered. And that was what made it hurt. Because if he was lying, then maybe kindness wasn't real. And if he wasn't lying, then maybe she had pushed away something that finally was. Lena hadn't danced in 4 days. Not even to demonstrate a warm-up, not even a subtle sway of her shoulders when the stereo played an old jazz loop the kids liked. Her body, usually in motion, had gone still. Her hands folded tightly during meetings. Her shoulders squared stiffly when someone asked where Damien had gone. He's busy, she said once, which wasn't a lie. He probably was. Somewhere. Doing something that didn't involve paint cans and flickering lights and a cracked mirror in a dance room that smelled like lemon cleaner and dust. The truth was, she missed him. And that terrified her. Because Lena Diaz had spent most of her adult life building walls, not because she didn't want love, but because love always came with conditions, if not spoken, implied, if not harsh, eventually withdrawn. She thought of her father vanishing without warning when she was 13, of the man she dated at 19 who said all the right things until her brother needed surgery and she had to work double shifts instead of going out on weekends. People loved you until you became inconvenient. Damien hadn't asked for anything. That's what had made him dangerous. On the 5th night, Lena stayed at the center late. The building was dark except for the hallway light outside the office. The kids had gone home hours ago. Mrs. Conway had left behind half a pie and a sticky note, "Please eat something. You're not fooling anyone." Lena sat at the desk with her knees pulled up, watching the blinking cursor on her grant application. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard but didn't type. She couldn't focus. Her thoughts drifted like they always did lately to Damien, to the day he'd carried in that box of donuts and asked how to untangle fairy lights, to the way he fixed things, not just broken furniture but tension in a room, to the way he had listened, like her voice mattered, and the way he'd looked at her the night she found out who he really was, like someone bracing for loss and still standing there anyway. She pulled open the drawer and took out the black card he'd left her when they first met. It was just his name and number. Minimalist. No company logo. She remembered how it felt in her pocket that night, the weight of a door she hadn't been ready to open. It was still heavy now, but her hands weren't trembling anymore. Across the city, Damien sat on a weathered bench near Audubon Park, his hoodie pulled low, watching as streetlights shimmered on the wet pavement. He had just turned down another invitation from his former business partner, some charity dinner press heavy cocktail attire. He hadn't attended a single one since he met Lena. He didn't want flashbulbs. He didn't want headlines. He wanted warmth. He wanted messy, beautiful, unscripted moments, like watching Lena teach dance with her hair pulled back and paint smudged across her elbow, or watching her bite her lip when she focused, or fall asleep in the front row during movie night because she'd worked 3 shifts that week. He hadn't seen her since the night she found out. She hadn't replied to his message, but he didn't blame her. He'd taken too long to trust her with the truth, and now all he could do was wait, until he couldn't anymore. The next morning, it was still early when Lena arrived at the center. The sun hadn't yet pushed through the clouds. The streets were wet from another night of drizzle, and everything smelled like concrete and magnolia trees. She unlocked the front door and immediately stopped. Sitting just inside was a small box wrapped in brown paper. No name, no note. She looked around. The street was empty. Cautiously, she picked it up and carried it to the front desk. The tape peeled easily, revealing a worn hardcover book inside The Art of Stillness by Pico Ear. She opened the front cover. A single line was scrawled inside. For when motion isn't the answer. Lena pressed the book against her chest, breathing deeply. She hadn't told him she was avoiding dance, but somehow he'd known. That evening, she called. She didn't plan to. Her fingers moved before her mind could catch up. The phone rang once, twice. Hello, his voice was soft, uncertain, like someone afraid to hope. It's me, she said. He let out a breath. Hey, I got the book. A pause. Did you like it? I haven't read it yet. That's fair. Silence. She closed her eyes. I miss having you around. Another silence, longer this time. I miss being around, he said. You hurt me. I know. I still don't know what to do with all of this. I don't need anything from you, he said quietly. No labels, no answers. I wanted to say that. I don't regret anything I said to you, or anything we did together. The only thing I regret is not telling you sooner. She bit her lip. You didn't act like someone who was hiding. I wasn't hiding from you. I was hiding from the version of me that people expect me to be. And who are you now? He didn't answer right away, still figuring it out. But I know where I'd rather be. Her fingers tightened around the phone. I don't want to be your charity. You never were. I don't want to be some broken thing you fix. You're the one who's been fixing me, Lena. Her throat tightened. She turned toward the mirror near the coat rack, the one with the chip in the corner, and saw herself reflected there, tired, guarded, hopeful. I'm not good at this, she whispered. Neither am I. But maybe... She hesitated. Maybe we try again, just slower this time. A beat passed. Then she heard it, his soft, relieved laughter. I'd like that. They didn't rush. That was the unspoken rule. No grand declarations, no sweeping gestures. Just small, careful steps. Like dancers learning a new routine, not leading, not following, simply moving in sync until the music made sense again. It started with coffee. Damien showed up at the center early one Monday with 2 mismatched mugs and a paper bag of still warm beignets. He didn't ask to come inside, just waited on the stoop like someone who was content to be invited, not entitled. Lena opened the door wearing yesterday's hoodie and an expression that said, I'm still deciding. She took the beignet. Don't get used to this, she muttered, powdered sugar already on her cheek. No promises, he said, grinning. Over the next 2 weeks, they slipped into a rhythm that felt new and familiar at the same time. Damien helped fix a jammed file cabinet in the office and didn't ask for a thank you. Lena offered him leftover gumbo and didn't ask for a conversation. They sat in silence some nights, listening to the creak of the floorboards and the laughter of kids echoing through empty halls. Other nights they talked about music, about family, about the strange comfort of broken places. Never about the company, never about headlines. Sometimes the space between them was quiet. Sometimes it buzzed with tension, but neither of them pushed. They were rebuilding. And rebuilding required patience. One afternoon, Damien lingered in the dance room after the kids had left. Lena was wiping down the mirror, her reflection soft with sweat and purpose. "You know he said I still haven't seen you dance." She shot him a look. "That's because I don't. You teach choreography, that's different." He tilted his head. "Why? Because choreography is about structure, technique, discipline. Dance is about letting go." She tossed the rag into the bin and grabbed her water bottle. "And letting go hasn't exactly worked out for me." Damien didn't argue. He just nodded, then stepped onto the floor and started counting beats under his breath. 1, 2, 3, 4. Lena raised an eyebrow. "What are you doing?" "Proving I still have zero rhythm," she snorted. "Teach me one move," he said. "Just one." "No, come on, one. I won't sue you if I fall. That's not the concern." "Then, what is—" She hesitated, then whispered, "What if I feel something again?" The words slipped out before she could catch them. The silence that followed felt fragile, like standing on a glass bridge. Damien didn't smile, didn't tease. He just stepped back, offering her the space she needed. "You don't have to show me," he said softly, "but if you ever want to dance again, I'd be honored to be your first step." And then he left. Lena stood there frozen, not in fear, in choice. 2 days later, she found him outside the cafe near the park, sketching in a worn notebook. His coffee had gone cold. He hadn't noticed. She sat down across from him, without a word reached for his cup, and swapped it with hers. "It's still hot," she said. He blinked, then smiled slowly. "Thank you. I want to show you something." They walked back to the center. It was dusk. The sky hung in bruised violets and fading gold. She unlocked the back door, led him through the dark hall, and stopped at the entrance of the dance room. No kids, no music, just the two of them and the faint buzz of the street lamp outside. "I still can't jump," she said. "The ligament never fully healed." "Okay. And I don't look like I used to in motion." "Lena." She looked up. "You don't owe me a performance," he said. "I just want to be here if you decide to move." That was enough. She crossed to the center of the floor, closed her eyes, and let her fingers stretch open, soft, tentative, like someone remembering what breath felt like. Her feet moved next. Slow at first, hesitant, then faster, pivoting, sliding, turning with muscle memory that had been buried but not erased. The music lived in her bones, in her scars. It wasn't perfect. It didn't have to be. She moved like someone finding language again after silence, and Damien watched not like a man enchanted, but like a man witnessing a miracle. When she stopped breathless and flushed, she looked at him expecting judgment, expecting pity. But he only stepped forward and whispered, "That was the most honest thing I've ever seen." And for once she believed it. Later that night, they sat on the rooftop of the center knees, side by side, watching the city breathe. Neither of them spoke for a long time. Then Damien said, "My mother died when I was 21. I was halfway through a product launch. I missed the last 3 days of her life because I was giving a keynote." Lena turned to him surprised. He'd never talked about his family. She used to make music, played the cello, never professionally, just at home. And she used to say that music was the only thing that could hold pain and joy at the same time. Lena looked down at her hands. "I think about that every time I see you teach," he said. She swallowed hard. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I want to build something that holds both. With you, if you'll let me." She leaned her head on his shoulder, just lightly, just enough. And in that quiet high above the city, something opened between them, not a promise, not yet, but the beginning of one. They sat on the rooftop of the center, knees side by side, watching the city breathe. Below them, the street hummed with late-night traffic and murmured music from a porch radio. Across the block, someone lit a cigarette, its tiny ember flaring like a lighthouse in the dark. The city felt alive and quiet at once. Neither of them spoke for a long time. Then Damien said, "My mother died when I was 21. I was halfway through a product launch. I missed the last 3 days of her life because I was giving a keynote." Lena turned to him surprised. He'd never talked about his family. She used to make music, played the cello, never professionally, just at home. And she used to say that music was the only thing that could hold pain and joy at the same time. Lena looked down at her hands. "That's exactly how I feel when I dance." He nodded. "I figured. I stopped dancing when my brother got sick," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "It felt selfish to move when he couldn't. And later, it just hurt too much to feel that free again." "I think you're the freest person I've ever met," he said gently. She smiled, but it faltered. "What if I mess it up? What if I let you in and it breaks me?" Damien looked at her, not with answers, but with something steadier. "Then we rebuild. Together." She leaned her head on his shoulder, just lightly, just enough. The weight of that quiet closeness said everything words couldn't. For the first time in a long time, Lena didn't feel like she was balancing on the edge of a cliff. She felt like maybe she had room to stand. It started with a knock. Not on the center's door, not on Lena's apartment, but on Damien's. A sharp, practiced knock that didn't hesitate between beats, 3 raps, pause, then 2 more. The kind of knock that came from someone who knew him. He opened the door to find Victoria Langston standing in heels too high for the sidewalk, sunglasses too large for dusk, and an expression carved from polished marble. "Hello, Damien." He hadn't seen her in over a year. Not since he stepped down from Cygnus and walked out of that world without a press release or parting speech. "V," he said flatly. "Didn't expect to see you here." She arched a brow. Clearly, Damien didn't invite her in. She didn't wait. She stepped past him into the loft, heels clicking across hardwood like judgment itself. "I heard you've been busy," she said, turning slowly, eyes grazing the room like a museum curator unimpressed by the exhibit. "I've been living," he replied. "You should try it." She smiled, sharp and practiced. "You've gone soft. I've gone honest." "That's what you're calling it now? Teaching kids to glue macaroni to poster boards and fixing thermostats in crumbling buildings." He didn't rise to it. "What do you want, V?" She slipped off her glasses and placed them neatly on the counter. "Investors are talking. Your name still carries weight. They want to know if you're really done." "I am. You said that before. I meant it then, and I mean it now." She paused. "Is it the girl?" The question hit like a slap, deliberate, precise. Damien didn't answer. Victoria stepped closer. "You walked away from your life, Damien. But you don't get to erase it, and she doesn't get to live in it without understanding what comes with your name." He held her gaze, unmoving. "You don't know her. She's already being Googled, whispered about. You think you can date someone without headlines catching up. I'm not dating her." Her expression flickered, surprised for a beat. "But I love her," he said, "so I'll deal with it when it comes." Victoria blinked once, then nodded. "Then I hope she's ready." She walked out without saying goodbye, and Damien stood in the silence she left behind, knowing that the calm they'd built was about to be tested. 2 days later, Lena was finishing a solo rehearsal at the center when she heard the first whisper. A parent waiting outside the classroom. "I saw her on that blog, the one that tracks tech execs and who they're dating." A murmur of laughter. Curious, not cruel. But it was enough. By the time she reached the front office, 2 more people had mentioned Damien's name. Not his first name. His full name. As if it suddenly mattered. That night, her phone buzzed with a message from her cousin in Atlanta. "Girl, are you seriously dating the Cygnus guy? Just saw your name on some hidden power couples article." Lena stared at the screen, heart sinking. So this was what came next. That evening, She didn't go home. She walked to the river instead, shoes in hand. Hoodie pulled up the Mississippi, stretching wide and dark before her. Damien found her there, he always did somehow. He sat beside her on the old concrete ledge, their shoulders barely touching. "Victoria came to see me," he said quietly. "I figured. She warned me. About this." Lena kept her eyes on the water. "And what did you say that I'd deal with it?" She laughed once hollow. "But I'm the one who has to deal with it too." "I know." She finally turned to him, eyes rimmed with frustration. "You should have told me. I didn't know it would blow up like this. You didn't think the world would care that a billionaire was spending his days mopping the floor of a community center in New Orleans with a girl from a working-class family. I hoped they wouldn't. And if they do?" she asked, voice sharper now. "If they dig, if they twist every part of this into a headline, I'm not built for that, Damien. I don't know how to live with spotlights." He swallowed. "Then I'll walk away from them." "Can you?" He hesitated. That was answer enough. "I don't want this to become a fairy tale with a price tag," she whispered. "I want a life that feels real. That stays small and honest and messy and ours. It still can. I don't know if it can." The silence between them filled with everything they weren't saying. Finally she stood. "I need time," she said. Damien nodded, not arguing. But when she walked away this time, he stayed on the river's edge, watching the moon ripple over the water and wondering if love could survive the gravity of past lives. The next morning, she opened the door to the center and found a letter. Not typed. Handwritten. "Lena, I know I brought the noise with me. I know you didn't ask for any of this. You've spent your life building something real, and now I've made it look like something people only click on for drama. I'm sorry. If you want me gone, I'll go. I'll keep supporting the center quietly, anonymously from a distance. But if you want me to stay, if there's a part of you that still wants us to try, I'm here. No spotlight, no speeches, just me." She read it twice, then again, then folded it carefully and placed it in her pocket over her heart. That evening. The center was quiet after closing. Lena stood in the middle of the dance room barefoot on the polished wood. She stared at her reflection in the long mirror, the woman she had become, stronger than she gave herself credit for. She took out her phone and called. Damien picked up on the first ring. "Hey," he said. She closed her eyes. "Let them talk." A pause. "What?" "Let them write whatever they want," she whispered. "Let them take photos and spin headlines. If we're honest, they'll get tired of the truth." He didn't respond right away. "You sure?" he asked. "No," she said. "But I want to try. With you. On our terms." He let out a soft laugh full of quiet relief. "Then we try. I still want a small life. Then we'll build one." She smiled into the phone. "You still owe me a dance." He chuckled. "How bad can I be? We'll find out." And this time when she hung up, there was no ache in her chest, just rhythm and breath, and the space between her ribs where love had decided to stay. It was the night of the showcase. The center buzzed with light and laughter, the halls lined with art projects, hand-painted signs, and the hum of anticipation. Parents filled folding chairs in the multi-purpose room, their phones ready. Kids peeked through the curtains, hearts pounding in costumes held together by safety pins and prayer. Lena stood backstage with a clipboard and a dozen bobby pins clutched in her palm. She moved between the dressing room and the stage like a conductor directing chaos, calm, alert, heart full. She wasn't performing, but her soul felt like it was. Across the room, Damien adjusted the soundboard sleeves, rolled fingers steady. He'd shown up 3 hours early to test the microphones and re-tape down a fraying cable by hand. He didn't ask to be thanked, didn't try to take credit. He just moved like he belonged here because now he did. Their eyes met across the room. Lena gave him the smallest smile. He returned it like it meant everything. 1 year ago, she never would have imagined this. Back then, she'd barely had enough funding to keep the lights on. She'd spent nights on the floor filling out grant forms by hand-rationing snacks for the kids who stayed late and had no dinner waiting at home. Back then, she believed she had to do it all alone, that love was a luxury, that trust was dangerous. Now she still led with grit, still fought hard. but she no longer did it with her guard raised like armor. Damien hadn't come in to rescue her. He came in and stayed. And the difference between those two things had changed everything. The showcase began. Lena stood just off stage as the first group of kids took their marks. She watched them move offbeat, beaming alive. Then came the spoken word piece from the teen poetry class. Then a duet from the violin program. Then the final number, a contemporary dance Lena had choreographed but never performed herself. As the music swelled, something pulled at her chest, not nerves, not fear. Permission. Her feet moved before her mind could hesitate. She stepped onto the stage in bare feet and black leggings, hair loose, breath shallow. No announcement, no fanfare. The audience hushed, and then she moved. Lena danced, not to impress, not to prove, but to remember. She danced like someone stitching herself back together with every motion, like someone forgiving the past with every breath, like someone claiming the body that once carried only fear and turning it into something free. The kids joined her near the end, one by one, their small feet finding rhythm in her lead. By the time the lights dimmed, the crowd was standing. Applause thundered, but Lena didn't hear it as noise. She heard it as belonging. After the showcase, parents clapped each other on the backs. Kids chased cupcakes across tables. The hallway echoed with 100 versions of, "I'm so proud of you." Lena stood in the quiet of the dance room barefoot again, the adrenaline wearing off, leaving only gratitude behind. Damien entered without knocking. He carried a single flower, a daisy plucked from the wild garden out front. Its petals were slightly crooked, a little dirt clinging to the stem. "No roses," she teased. "You're not the roses type," he said. "Too perfect, too predictable." He handed her the flower. She twirled it in her fingers, smiling. "I didn't plan to perform. I know. You think anyone noticed I forgot half the steps?" "Not a chance." He stepped closer, then stopped like he was asking her permission. Lena looked up. "You stayed. I told you I would." She reached for his hand. "So now what?" "We build," he said. "We paint walls and fix leaky ceilings. We make terrible coffee and mess up choreography. We fight sometimes. We forgive often. We show up. And when the noise comes back," he smiled gently, "we turn up our music louder." She stared at him for a long beat. Then, "You know you can never leave now, right?" "Wasn't planning on it." She leaned in and kissed him, not like a fairy tale, not like a finale, like a beginning. Months later, the center expanded, the programs grew. So did Lena. So did Damien. Not into something new, but into something truer. They didn't call it a fairy tale. They didn't need to. They called it home. And when people asked how it started, how a billionaire fell in love with a woman who paid for his subway fare, Damien would laugh and say, "She didn't save me. She just reminded me who I was." And Lena? She'd shrug, maybe smirk a little. "All I did was believe in someone before he believed in himself. And in that belief, they built something more valuable than any empire, a life. Together, chosen, real." Thank you for joining Lena and Damien's journey. Sometimes the smallest act, like paying for a stranger's subway fare, can lead to a connection that changes everything. Lena and Damien's story reminds us that healing begins when we let someone see us, flaws and all. If this story touched your heart, drop a comment and let us know where you're watching from. We love seeing how far these stories reach. And if you believe in second chances, quiet love, and the beauty of being seen, subscribe to the channel, give this video a like and click here to watch another story that might just stay with you a little longer.